Truly great rivalries are bigger than the sport they come from because they are about so much more than just the game. Yankees and Red Sox, LeBron James and Steph Curry. But the greatest rivalry in all of sports is one that you might not have ever heard of. Throughout the 2000s, Hiroyuki Suzuki and Yuki Spencer battled time and time again for the title of World Yo-Yo Champion. This was about so much more than just going up and down the string. Their clash was about ideology and how you see the world. Not only about who was the greatest yo-yo player, but about what it means to be great in any field. A battle where two teenagers would put entire nations on their back, and a rivalry that builds to a climactic finish that every sports movie should be jealous of. Hey, I'm Caitlin Clark, but you can call me The Bird, and this is the greatest rivalry in yo-yo history. But before we get to the crazy conclusion, let's meet these characters. In one corner, we have Hiroyuki Suzuki. Japan's golden boy, he was the guy who practiced more than anyone and wanted to win more than everyone. And you could see it in his performances. Polished even to the point of themed outfits. Choreographed beyond anyone else at the time with overflowing stage presence. And he usually looked like he could not miss. He knew the path to victory, and he wanted to do whatever it took to get there. And in the other corner, we have America's very own Yuki Spencer. If Hiroyuki is pure effort, then Yuki Spencer is raw, natural talent. He always had the deepest bag of tricks that no one else's mind ever could have put together, yet at the same time, he just made everything look effortless. He was the epitome of that very American, very mid-2000s idea that it just isn't cool to try hard. It didn't matter what music he picked, or what he wore, or how much he practiced. Yuki just oozed so much aura, had so much style and skill that he was untouchable. Sometimes his floor felt higher than anyone else's ceiling, effort be damned. And all of this is obvious about both of them just from their very first meeting in contest. In 2001, they would both establish themselves as high-level players. Only Hiroyuki entered Worlds and placed in the top 10, performing to the Mickey Mouse Club theme song with the years to match. This would earn him the nickname Mickey, which I'm going to use pretty freely throughout the rest of this video. 2002's championship would be the first time the two met in competition. I should probably mention that I think both of them were around 13 years old here. Hiroyuki steps on stage with a glitter-covered shirt themed for his song and gestures with every trick while taking choreographed steps and smiling to the crowd. His material is flashy, open, and big to match that stage presence. On the other side, Yuki was surprised to even make finals his first time competing at Worlds. He doesn't look up once during his routine and seems to smile only out of nervousness or even embarrassment. Even when he debuts the trick now known as the Yuki Slack, which got the crowd going nuts and literally redefined how we think about yo-yoing. Remember this trick for later. His tricks were just more complex than anyone else's on that stage by like 2 orders of magnitude, with a much more closed and intricate geometry to them. The results? Hiroyuki Suzuki, 2nd place. Yuki Spencer, your new world champion. Even though they couldn't be more different, these are clearly the two guys to beat. This was all happening just after the yo-yo boom, and yo-yo technology was advancing rapidly. Check out this video if you want to know a little bit more about that. Thanks to yo-yos performing so much better, the players who stuck around were innovating slacks, unresponsive play, and all sorts of tricks at an unreal pace. Both Yuki and Mickey were part of this, pushing yo-yoing forward with ideas that no one had thought of even a year earlier. But they were running in completely opposite directions with it. And this meant that when you picked a side between Hiroyuki Suzuki and Yuki Spencer, you weren't just saying who you thought had a better routine. You were taking a stance on what yo-yoing is and should be, and more importantly, why we do it and what it means as art. Hiroyuki does everything right. He's the textbook competitor. It's easy to understand what he's doing, but impossible to do it like he does. Yuki is the mad scientist. No one could recreate his style despite everyone trying. As soon as anyone even got close, Yuki had new material to leave them in the dust again. He was almost too cool to compete, but so talented that he won in spite of that. So it's not hard to see why players would care who reigned as their king. Is it better to do things perfectly, or is it more beautiful to break some of the rules? Is the best player the one who studied the game the most, or the one who was such a natural that he didn't need to? But then 2003 saw the meteoric rise of JD to the title, where he won everything he entered, which doesn't really fit into my story. Hiroyuki Suzuki, 3rd place. Yuuki Spencer, 4th. But JD retired from competition after his sweep, so back to your regularly scheduled programming. In 2004, yo-yos and yo-yoing have progressed so much, and these two have truly come into the styles that we know them for. Miki performs an even tighter routine where every step and yo-yo move is planned out to a highly edited Eurobeat track. Yuuki Spencer is up on stage wearing cargo shorts like it's any other day, performing to Inertiatic ESP by the Mars Volta. Miki's tricks and routine are clean, tempered, and perfectly presented. Yuki's are chaotically beautiful. Scores were tallied, and we once again had a new world champion, Hiroyuki Suzuki, with Yuuki Spencer finishing in a distant 3rd place. Poetically, Miki even re-edited and reused his song from 2002 to finally get the title over the guy who'd beaten him 2 years earlier. By the scores, it wasn't close. Miki finished with a 95 overall to Yuki's 81.9. Second place went to Tamanari Ishiguro, better known as Black, the 2001 champion. Now, I haven't talked a whole lot about the context outside of the actual World Championship. Japan's dominance in competitive yo-yo, especially during this era, is a pretty important detail. Even though we just had 2 back-to-back American World Champions, let's take a look through the 2004 results. Across the 5 main divisions, only 2 non-Japanese players made it onto the podium, despite the event being in Florida. This year was the most extreme example, but it wasn't really unexpected. Much like their top player, Japan took competition seriously, practicing hard and focusing on how to score points for the judges. Americans tended to follow in Yuki's footsteps, more interested in looking cool and succeeding off of creativity and vibes. But seeing Japan do it to us like that definitely lit a fire under some of the American competitors. Even within Japan, the competition was fierce. After rising to the top, Miki would win Japan Nationals pretty much every time he chose to compete. He had taken it in 2003 and 2004, but 2005 was one of the rare exceptions where he would finish 2nd to Takayasu Tanaka. Seeing the reigning world champion bleed like that made the coming world championship feel wide open, especially with Yuuki capturing his first US national title in the same year, although that would technically happen after Worlds. Augie Fash was the reigning US national champion going into the 2005 World Championship, but on that stage, it would be pretty clear that a certain 2 players were on a different level from everyone else. Even Miki himself thought so.
And who do you think is your chief rival?
Black and Yuuki Spencer, they are very good.
To defend his title, Hiroyuki Suzuki brought a routine that is not just brilliantly choreographed by 2005 standards, but even to this day. He had a slew of new grinds, zoning elements, and 360 tricks that were way ahead of the curve. And most importantly, he did the first ever speed combo on the world stage, which opened up a whole new class of trick. This is where the whole Godspeed trend comes from. Meanwhile, Yuuki Spencer's tech combos were more diverse and well executed than ever. He redefined regenerations in unresponsive 1A competition, and he brought some fresh slacks, whips, and zoning of his own. All of this while setting a new standard of effortless by messing around the moment he stepped on stage, and casually, almost intentionally, taking one of the worst errors you can have in a routine by tying a knot and switching yo-yos. 2005 was exactly what everyone in the hall wanted to see, and it's probably the best illustration of just how good these 2 players were, but also of how stylistically opposed. Yuuki made technical yo-yoing what it is. Miki created the blueprint for speed players to approach competition. Miki was rehearsed and composed on a whole new level. Yuuki legitimately might have improvised the whole thing on stage, but somehow they were the best players alive by a huge margin. 3rd place went to Japan's new national champ Takayasu, finishing with a score of 70. The top 2 had 94 and 95. Hiroyuki Suzuki earned his 2nd world title here, but understand that this easily could have gone the other way if Yuuki Spencer didn't have that switch out. This is where the rivalry really started to heat up. Despite not getting the world title, Yuuki would clinch that first national championship in 2005 and also be named Trick Innovator of the Year, largely based on his new material at Worlds, but also for his general contributions in pioneering tech. And I just want to mention that Jesse Garcia also deserves a lot of credit for doing that with him. Rest in peace. Because of recognition like this, and because Yuki's style is just more visually complex, I think he's often given credit as the innovative one in this rivalry, but I want to make sure I point out Mickey's contributions too. There's no doubt that Yuuki is in the running for most influential player to ever do it, but a lot of what Mickey innovated was in routine construction and trick presentation, which doesn't necessarily get the same credit. They were both consistently pushing each other and the entire Yo-Yo game forward. And I really want to highlight just how intertwined creativity and competition were during this era of Yo-Yo. The best players tended to prove it by showing wild new material on stage, and they were usually rewarded for doing so. That often meant keeping new tricks a secret until the right major event came along. Again, this will be on the exam. Remember it for later. Tangent aside, 2006 truly brought us peak Hiroyuki. All of his past routines had been smiley and upbeat with a little bit of lingering Mickey Mouse Club energy. But this time, he was cool and collected like never before. A bleach streak of his bangs, shining gold Hiroyuki Suzuki t-shirt, and glitter Enyo plastic yo-yo to match make it clear that he has reached his final form. He brought better, harder tricks than ever before, even going for some regenerations to make it clear that he was keeping pace with Yuuki. His routine was nearly flawless, perfectly arranged, and featured one of the most influential tricks of all time. This was the first time most yo-yoers saw a modern horizontal combo on the stage, and this style of trick has become a huge part of competitive yo-yoing today. He looked unbeatable, and it was the crystallization of everything his style represented. You could say that Yuki's freestyle was also symbolic of his competitive identity, but not really for the right reasons. If his whole thing was effortlessly being that good, well, this looked like the time he actually went on stage with no practice just to see what happened. And the result was, he still looked like he might be the best yo-yoer in the room, but he definitely did not have the best time on stage. This freestyle didn't really iterate on 2005's routine at all, and was pretty sloppy, full of switch outs, restarts, and small mistakes. It honestly doesn't look like he really wanted to be there. Yuki's performance could not have gone much worse, and yet he still finished in 6th place in the world. Which is kind of insanely impressive, but not quite as impressive as winning by over 20 points. Which Hiroyuki Suzuki did, making it the largest margin of victory ever in the 1A World Championship. Hiroyuki Suzuki and Yuki Spencer were still probably the 2 best players in the world, but if Yuki didn't come correct, Mickey was in a different stratosphere than everyone else. And that's what stoked the flames for 2007. This is the showdown I've been building up to this whole time. Hiroyuki Suzuki has won 3 world titles in a row. He is the Michael Jordan of yo-yo, right down to the color scheme and the sneakers. To this day, no one else has ever three-peated in 1A. And if you're Yuki Spencer and you believe that you are actually the best player alive, you will not let this turn into 4. So what would each player bring this time? Mickey used the same approach that had been working for him, but even more mature and focused. A more dynamic song and natural evolutions of the tricks he'd been doing, like more complex horizontal and a more involved leg trick. Yuuki, on the other hand, did things pretty differently. He'd always been the master of tech, and some of those tricks were present here, but this time there was so much more variety to go with them. He built so much more on the slacks and regens that he'd already written the book on, and added game-changing body tricks and binds too. Crowds in 2007 just weren't ready. There were even some speed tricks this time, taking a page right out of Mickey's book. It was truly the best version of Yuuki we'd ever seen. And maybe most importantly, he went full main character mode and relied on the power of friendship. This is Eiji Yokoyama's winning Japan Nationals routine in the 4A division from the same year. Pay attention to the outfit and the haircut. Now here's Yuki's freestyle. Do you notice anything? The music for both routines, identical. Speed by Atari Teenage Riot. Ironically, this track had sort of been popularized in the yo-yo scene by Hiroyuki Suzuki a year earlier in a qualifying routine, but that's beside the point. This time, Yuuki wasn't just battling for America's honor on the world stage. He was working with his friends, other top yo-yoers who knew and believed in just how talented he was, and wanted to see him back on top. And he was doing it in the form of a tribute to Eiji, a close friend from Japan. This was not not about a national rivalry. This was between Yuuki and Hiroyuki, and it was a battle of Yoyo ideals. If Mickey got 4 in a row, it would be a crushing blow to Yuuki's legacy, and it would probably mean the ideological death of not only Yuuki's technical style, but his influence on the scene. Mickey's clean and clear style would take over the narrative of this whole decade. With more to fight for than ever, this time even Yuuki Spencer put in the work to build and perfect a routine. But here's where it gets really crazy. There was a film crew from ESPN at the World Yo-Yo Contest this year, working on a bit to air for the channel. Naturally, they wanted to interview the 3-time returning champion. And the story goes that in that interview, Mickey told them how this year he was doing something unbeatable. Remember how players would save their biggest tricks for the stage? That was so no one else had a chance to learn or one-up their stuff. But someone happened to be eavesdropping during that interview, and they passed the information back to Yuuki himself. Mickey's unbeatable trick was a horizontal Yuuki slack. And even with only a day to practice, Yuuki's response was this: I can do that, because Yuuki Spencer is the natural talent. For him, no practice makes perfect. With the way yo-yo contests work, since Hiroyuki was the reigning champion, he had the luxury of performing last in finals. Which means that Yuuki Spencer got to beat Mickey to the punch on that ultimate trick, which you could argue Yuuki had the original rights to anyway. And as if it was scripted, Yuuki absolutely crushes the horizontal Yuuki slack. The crowd goes feral and never quiets down. I was there will never be a louder audience than this one. When Mickey takes a stage and goes for his Yuuki slack as a climactic moment in the routine, the impact is gone. The crowd has already seen it by the man himself, and Mickey even drops the ending and has to bail on the trick. Both players honestly had pretty sloppy runs. The crowd was with Yuuki, but what about the judges? In third place, Paul Hahn, 2006's second place finisher and the current US national champion with a score of 73. Second place had a score of 92.4, with first only barely ahead at 93.7. A single point. It came down to a single point. This isn't really how yo-yo judging works, but with a gap that small, you could say that a single trick might make the difference. Like, I don't know, how well each player did something like a horizontal Yuuki slack on stage. And with that 1 point, Yuuki Spencer reclaims the throne, taking the crown from the unstoppable Hiroyuki Suzuki. So the rivalry finally came down to indomitable spirit, the power of friendship, espionage, and a trick invented by Yuuki but done in the style popularized by Mickey. How could it be more perfect than that? And as a disclaimer, I need to say that I didn't actually talk to Yuuki or Mickey about this story. The ESPN interview thing is sort of an urban legend of the community, but if it's not true, I don't want to know, because that incredible tale marks the end of the rivalry. In 2008, Yuuki chose not to even enter Worlds and instead worked with his longtime friend John Ando. And stunningly enough, it worked. Hiroyuki Suzuki would come in second once again, with John Ando crowned the 2008 World Champion in just his second time competing and won it. So if you're keeping score, that's 3 wins for Hiroyuki Suzuki and 2 for Yuuki Spencer. But if you really want to, maybe you could call it 2.5 for his part in the Ando win. In 2009, an unlucky switch out in the qualifying round would keep Yuuki Spencer out of finals. Hiroyuki would take home another second place, and Shinya Kito would earn the title, ending the decade and the era of Yuuki versus Mickey. Yuuki would go on to win 2009 US Nationals with possibly his best routine ever, and it is a damn shame we didn't get to see that showdown properly at Worlds. Yuuki and Mickey would meet in competition one last time at Worlds 2010, but by that point a new challenger had appeared and kinda left both of them in the dust. As an epilogue, Hiroyuki Suzuki would actually climb to the summit one more time, earning a final world title in 2012. But there's so much more to this rivalry than just counting trophies or looking at numbers. People get really caught up in measuring greatness sometimes, instead of trying to understand and celebrate it. Mickey and Yuuki weren't the best players of their era because of statistics or results. They were the kings because of what they stood for and how they changed the game. Trust in the judging system came from the the fact that it sorted guys like that to the top. They really were heroes to us Yoyo kids. Even today, Brandon Vu will tell you how much Mickey inspired him, and here's a picture of me meeting my hero just minutes after he won that title at Worlds 2007. To say that someone won or lost this rivalry because of the number of world titles completely misses the point. Both of these players meant so much more than that to thousands of people. If either one of them hadn't been there, the world titles from this whole era would not have carried the same weight. Yuki Spencer and Hiroyuki Suzuki taught me what it means to be great, and hopefully I've passed that on to you now. If you need more Yo-Yo lore right now, check out one of these videos. Drop a comment down below with who you think had the greatest rivalry of all time, be that Yo-Yo or otherwise, and hopefully I'll have more for you sooner next time, but all the same, thank you so much for watching, and for now, I've gotta fly.